do allow me now to introduce the panel who will be in conversation. It will be chaired by Steve Baker, MP, Minister of State for Northern Ireland. Please do give our panellists a really warm welcome. Also, Pedro Serrano, who is the European Union Ambassador to the UK. From the Embassy of Japan, Minister Kiichiro Kawakami. Welcome. Also, Andrew Hammond, Director of External Affairs for Mitsui & Co. Europe. And Emmanuel Terrasse, who is the Vice President, European Countries and Equipment, Thales Alenia Space. Welcome to you all. As I say, Steve Baker is going to be your chair for this event. Before entering politics, Steve spent 10 years as an engineering officer in the Royal Air Force, serving all over the world, and then became a software engineer. And as if chairing panels and being in politics doesn't involve enough adrenaline, Steve is also a very keen skydiver. He rides motorbikes and is a fast catamaran sailor. So, over to you.
Anita, thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for being here. It's a real privilege to add my own welcome and to say thank you for being here in Northern Ireland. I think this has been a terrifically successful conference already. Either that or officials have just been very careful about who I met. But it's particularly important to me to be here. As some of you may know, I had one or two things to do with the process of the UK leaving the European Union, and it was a very difficult time. But we are approaching today, for the United Kingdom and for Northern Ireland, indeed I believe for all of Europe, a moment of real transformation and opportunity. And I think in this panel you're really going to hear about this transformation in our relationships and that the opportunity that that can deliver. A lot's been said about the unique position that Northern Ireland finds itself in, but I just want you to imagine some of the world's special economic zones. They tend to be very good at getting goods in, but Northern Ireland has this particular opportunity to get goods out into Great Britain unfettered as of right, out into the European Union with privileged access without tariffs or process, out into all of our FTA countries. So we've joined the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. That is transformational, I believe, for the world. And also, of course, to do it all under UK services law where that is important to you. So I think those are the four pillars which particularly apply to Northern Ireland, uniquely in all the world. When we parade market access to Great Britain and to the European Union, of course people sometimes reply, you could have had that in the EU. And of course that's true. But what you can't get in the EU is to have access to CPTPP and our other free trade agreements. So it's a particularly unique set of circumstances. And what I'm going to do now is take my seat and turn to one of the most important figures in this transformed relationship. So Ambassador Pedro, tell me, what has the Windsor Framework meant for the relationship between the UK and the European Union?
No, thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, Steve. Quite a privilege to be here and having learned so much from this distinguished audience and panelists and speakers today on something very important to us, which is the relationship with Northern Ireland. The European Union has been a partner of Northern Ireland for many decades. And we've been accompanying Northern Ireland through its peace process and supporting it even economically. And we calculated more or less over the 30 years, more than 3 billion euros have been devoted to this. And when it came to Brexit, we knew that we had to find a specific solution for Northern Ireland, precisely to ensure that that we had no hard border in Northern Ireland. And this has given way precisely to this Windsor framework. The situation has been, of course, I think that it does this settling over Brexit. We're seeing the importance of our relationship. And we've also seen how that importance has also been brought to our attention by the Ukraine crisis and the need for the EU and the UK to stick together. We have shared values, we have shared interests. And so we had to find solutions to the Northern Ireland issue, and it has been a privilege, actually, that we have seen our top leaders working on this and finding solutions. And our President von der Leyen with the Prime Minister, Šefčovič, our Vice President, with James Cleverly, with Heaton Harris. You've been active as well on all this. And I think the defining element is, again, a recovery of trust in the relationship. And I think a Windsor framework means that again. We have trust and respect for the interests of each other and the challenges that solutions that have to be brought represent for each other. And I think it's that environment of respect and understanding that has allowed the Windsor framework to come forward. And actually, this Windsor framework has opened the door to flourishing of the relationship. And we've seen how after this, we now have a memorandum of understanding for a financial regulatory forum that we're going to establish. I was coming to that last week. We reached an agreement on participation of the UK in EU programs, and it will be participating in Horizon and Copernicus, and this is huge, and we've heard it today, actually, and the relevance it has for these wonderful universities in Northern Ireland and the links with industry and business. So all that is advancing also very well. We're working even on other issues, and I think most of you will have read in the press as well, work on agreement on Frontex agreement with Frontex. So we're working on many fronts, and also, of course, on this huge challenge that we have with the Russian aggression on Russia, and which means that we're also working together on foreign security and defense policy. And the reality is that the relationship is very, very deep, and we have our economic systems are profoundly linked. We're the first trade partner of the UK by far, with 40% of trade in goods being with the European Union. You're our third partner with 9.8. So, and we have 5 million European Union citizens here, and we have more than 1 million UK citizens within the EU. So the relationship is very deep. We're finding ourselves again in that relationship, finding comfort in it, reestablishing the links of trust that have to be there, and then we have to continue reaffirming. And actually the Windsor framework has been very instrumental in achieving this. So I think we could describe this year as a good year in EU-UK relationship. Now, I'm not sure that we could describe it in those terms the past few years, in a way. They were interesting, important. Everybody was trying to achieve what they needed to achieve, and full respect for that. But we are finding again the reality of that relationship, and as an ambassador of the European Union to the United Kingdom, I find it very rewarding, and hope that I can contribute to that as well.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to say what a huge privilege it is for me, after everything we've all been through as the UK and the EU, and in particular as Northern Ireland, what a privilege it is to sit here and hear you say that trust has been restored. And it's a real privilege. And I think that message will be heard loud and clear here and elsewhere. You know, this is the two of us agreed on a flourishing of a newly restored relationship, and I'm extremely grateful to you. Thank you. And Minister Kawakami, you're here from the Embassy of Japan, Minister for the Economy. Tell me, CPTPP and our accession to it, what does that mean for Japan? What does that mean for us and for Northern Ireland?
Yes, CPTPP is a great agreement, as Secretary Badenoch described this morning. And it is a great regional agreement in the Pacific, where the center of the world economy is shifting to. So it was very natural to me when the UK decided to seek the membership after Brexit. And we really welcome the conclusion of the agreement. It was signed quite recently in July. And now we have been working to complete the domestic procedures. And I think as early as next year, the UK will be the 12th full-fledged member, and we will welcome the UK's joining the CPTPP. This is an agreement that has a very enhanced market access, very high standard rules, including very innovative digital rules. And it also has an evolving system that it entails. And with all of these elements, the CPTPP would provide good opportunities for the business for the UK in the years to come. This is not replacing the EU market automatically, but this would create a new flow of goods and new supply chain. I know some people who say there are very minimal economic benefits by the CPTPP, but it is based on a very static modeling. So, and this doesn't take into account the dynamism that I have described. So I hope that with the UK's accession into the agreement, that the CPTPP itself would evolve itself, and UK will join. UK will also enjoy the benefit of the expanding framework.
Thank you very much indeed. And of course, we concluded a free trade agreement between ourselves before our accession.
Exactly.
And could you tell us a bit more about that UK-Japan free
Thank you
trade
very much,
agreement?
yes. I myself am involved in that negotiation as a deputy chief negotiator. And it was the first agreement that the UK has signed after the Brexit. We decided to finish the negotiation by the end of transition period that followed after the referendum. Yes. This is very important to keep secure the smooth transition from the Brexit, and we have managed to do that. And thanks to the agreement was put in place in time, there was no economic slump or trade slump between Japan and the UK after the Brexit. And I think trade agreement, this shows that the trade agreement really works. Yeah. And I think the UK government's strategy to conclude as many as trade agreements to secure the smooth transition was really wise one and very correct one.
We're a free trading nation, and our partnership with you is, of course, really important, fundamental, really value you being here to explain it. And I think a common theme with both the EU and with Japan and with CPTPP is high standards. It's something we've all talked about. Can I come back to you, Andrew, in a moment, but come to Emmanuel to talk about Thales and your experience of being here in Northern Ireland, what it's meant to you, and what kind of success it's been.
Well, we are Thales Alenia Space is a space company. We are a truly European player. We are based in 10 different European countries, over 17 sites, and we are active in the United Kingdom since 2015, with 3 sites: 2 in England, in Harwell, in Oxfordshire, and in Bristol. And since 2016, we are based also in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, where we've developed a manufacturing facility to integrate propulsion systems for satellites. And for us, as a truly European player, we are strongly involved in trade between Northern Ireland and the rest of the world, with a strong focus on European Union countries. And so clearly the recent evolution, as mentioned by you, Minister, and by the Ambassador, have been very important milestones for us that allow us also to envisage the future of our Northern Irish activities with confidence, both because we know what are the rules in terms of trade that will apply thanks to the Windsor framework, and also because the confirmation of the UK participation in Horizon and in Copernicus is something that will allow us from our UK and in particular from our Northern Irish facilities to participate in these programs that are crucial for space.
So it sounds like a spirit of relief and a gladness to be here and a plan to stay.
Yeah, indeed. I think it allows us also to think about the future, how we want to further develop our activities in Northern Ireland, relying on what has been the success of our current activities. I think all of the people on stage today have mentioned what are the strengths of Northern Ireland in terms of people, in terms of skills, in terms of support from the authorities, both at UK and Northern Ireland level, to help investors. And I think with this new framework of rules relating to trade and research programs, it creates really the right environment for further investment in Northern Ireland globally.
Well, We're extremely grateful to you and to Thales for being here and for considering that further investment. Thank you very much. Andrew, please do tell us something of Mitsui's plans in Northern Ireland.
Sure. Well, just some background, first of all, and it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting us as a Japanese company. We're a very diverse company. Our spread is from agriculture to transport and mobility, through to metals and minerals. A very diverse company, including actually a seaweed company here in these islands. So I think that probably is an illustration of that. We're the UK, so we're Japan's largest investor in the UK and the longest standing firm with a footprint here. In 2022, our stock of investment was around 1.3 billion, with trading receivables of about 1.8 billion. So a significant sized operation. It's also perhaps worth saying in the context of this summit that next month we assume the presidency of what's called the Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry trade group. That's a trade group of about 300 organizations, companies, so a significant entity there. So hopefully we can channel good spirits through there as well. In terms of our profile, we welcome the relationship with the United Kingdom. We're a member of the UK Investment Council, which advises ministers on the global economic environment. In terms of these islands, we've had a long-standing footprint. We had an office in Dublin for over 50 years, but if I talk through some of our investments in the last year, it ranges everywhere from £500 million in renewable energy through to £500,000 in the seaweed company that I mentioned earlier, which is a key part of our portfolio. Always learning new things about that business. In terms of some of our historical footprint, on the transport and mobility side, we're one of the first and leading providers of trains on these islands, and some of those actually go between Dublin and Belfast. On the renewable side, we've made a big investment in a company called Mainstream, that £500 million investment I mentioned earlier, and that's just, for instance, won a big contract in Shetland for offshore wind, 2.3 GW, so significant size contract. So we have a very positive outlook on these islands, including Northern Ireland. I know from experience that the advantages of the Windsor Framework, SEPA, as the Minister and Mr. Baker was talking about earlier, plus also the TPP as well. They do really provide advantages, unique advantages, given the being the only nation in the world to be able to access both the UK and the EU single market. So I think that those are big things. We're also aware in the nation as well of the wider advantages. I've got many Northern Irish friends in London, very smart people, and I know that reflects the quality of the education system here. So I do think that the future is positive. As has been alluded to by speakers earlier, what I think is now needed is doubling down on that long-term framework that we've had over the last 25 years, clearly with the Good Friday Agreement. And I think if that happens, the future is very positive.
Well, thank you very much. So on the theme of a positive future, is that how things seem from Japan? Do we look like we have a positive future here in Northern Ireland?
Oh, of course, yes. On one hand, we are very much looking forward to, as for the whole UK, we really welcome the emergence of the independent UK after the Brexit, so that we can work together on the world stage. But on the other hand, it is very important for the Japanese companies operating in the UK for the UK to have a good relations with the European Union.
Yes.
Because most of the Japanese companies, those 400 companies, are the regional headquarters of the big firms of Japan. And they are covering business not only in the UK, but they cover their business operations of the whole of the Europe. Sometimes their coverage goes beyond Europe to include Middle East and Africa. So for them, it is very important that UK to the United Kingdom to have a good relation with the European Union, because UK has been a gateway for the Japanese company to enter the European market, and it was a chosen hub for them. And in order to remain to do so, it is very important that the UK and the EU has a stable relation. So we are very much delighted that the Windsor Framework was agreed, and that also matters Northern Ireland, not Northern Ireland. So, and I think the unique position of the Northern Ireland gained from the Windsor Framework would provide it a great opportunity to be a gateway both to the UK and the EU, and that's important for the Japans too.
Could I ask you, Pedro, to reflect on that global perspective on what this relationship means around the rest of the world? So that, as we've just been told, Japan needs us to be on good terms. And do you see that in your relations with other countries, that there's a sense of relief and happiness that the rest of the world can now see that the UK and the EU are going forward as friends?
Well, the rest of the world is a complicated place. Yeah. and we have some that are more friends than others. Certainly with Japan, we have a brotherly relationship together in the G7, and there's no doubt that within what we would call the Western world, it is very important that the European Union and the UK have strong relations. Most of our member states are NATO allies. The UK plays a key role in NATO. And as I was saying earlier, the Ukraine crisis has shown really the need for us to stick together. And even beyond Ukraine, I mean, there's a whole agenda of peace and prosperity and democracy that we have to preserve in Europe and support as much as we can abroad. And for that, it is very important that we remain together. And finally, I think for this community here, the investment community, the fact that we are sticking together provides also security and stability. The Windsor Framework provides legal certainty on how things have to happen, and that is key for any investor. And furthermore, what we see as well is how it shows that the new framework that we've established through Brexit, which is based on the withdrawal agreement and the trade and cooperation agreement, works. Actually, we're going to be having, I think, I don't want to scare anyone, but 19 specialized committee groups from here to the end of the year. I mean, and we are finding solutions, and we are seeing that these mechanisms are providing us with problem-solving instruments, and I think that is very important. So yes, I do think that our relationship has benefits for the rest of the world.
Well,
definitely.
thank you very much indeed. It's been indicated to me in the absence of the traffic lights, which have stopped working, that we've got to come to a conclusion. But I wonder if I could just very cheekily ask our two companies to have the last word. So perhaps Talis, you could give us the last word, Emmanuel.
Well, I think what I can say is globally our experience in Northern Ireland has been very positive. I'm very happy to have done this step of investing in Northern Ireland. Our intention is to continue to extend and deepen, I would say, that presence, extend globally and see how we can develop new activities. We export actually 100% of what we do in Northern Ireland in the world, in the EU and other countries. We want to continue to develop products also for the wider export, but also for the UK market. And as mentioned several times by speakers, Northern Ireland is really in this unique position now, being able to serve both the EU and the UK market. And we want also to deepen our presence in Northern Ireland. And I think the richness of Northern Ireland is also the network, the ecosystem that can be built around academias, around other companies. And this is what we are doing, building around us a space cluster that I think can create even more value for Northern Ireland and the UK than a company alone can do.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Andrew, the very last word to Mitsui.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm really impressed by the energy in the room today. I've met so many people with great ideas. Mitsui constantly looks at investment options, trade options. One example, for instance, we're working with a local dairy firm. We had a long-standing relationship where we, for instance, send milk produce to Asia. And we look across the full spectrum of options. What we're interested in is not the geographical location, but the quality of the investment case. That's what we will continue to do, and we very much look forward to continuing to partner with people in the room going forwards.
Well, Emmanuel, Andrew, Minister Kawakami, Ambassador Serrano, thank you all very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope what you've seen today is that the United Kingdom has succeeded in renewing and transforming our relationship with the European Union, with global partners, and indeed continuing to reassure and attract international investors. I'm really proud of what we've achieved. I hope that this session has been useful to you. Please join me in thanking our panel.